The loud sound of a Harley-Davidson motorcycle broke the quiet of an empty industrial area. The shiny chrome metal sparkled under the bright afternoon sun as Jake Reaper Morrison shifted gears. His leather vest had a Hell's Angels patch on it that moved in the hot wind. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this forgotten part of Oakland where rust and broken glass covered empty warehouses like strange decorations. But his gut feeling told him something was wrong. After riding with the Angels for 20 years, Jake had learned to trust his gut feeling more than any GPS or logical thinking. The engine rumbled underneath him, like a living creature that could sense he was worried. Something in the air felt poisonous and dangerous, like the moment right before a storm starts. He pulled into the shadow of a falling-apart factory and turned off the engine. Silence rushed in, heavy and hard to breathe through. Then he heard it. A sound so quiet it almost wasn't there. A whimper, soft, scared, barely sounding human. Jake's blood turned to ice. He jumped off the bike in one smooth movement, his boots making crunching sounds on broken concrete. The sound came again, louder this time, filled with pain. His hand automatically moved to the knife attached to his belt as he walked toward the sound. Behind a rusty dumpster, between stacks of rotting wooden boards, he found her. A little girl, no more than 7 years old. Her small body was tied to a metal pipe with thick rope. Her wrists were rubbed raw and bleeding. Her face was covered with dirt and tears. Duct tape covered her mouth. Her wide, scared eyes looked at Jake's tattooed face. For a moment, she tried to scream through the tape. "Easy, easy," Jake whispered, getting down on one knee. His huge body suddenly seemed too big, too scary. He held up his hands, showing her his palms. "I'm not going to hurt you, kid. I'm here to help." She didn't believe him. How could she? He looked like every nightmare parents warned their children about. 6 feet 4 inches tall, covered in tattoos, scarred knuckles, a beard that hadn't been shaved in months, and the death's head patch on his back that marked him as part of one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in America. But Jake had a daughter once. Lily. She would be about this age now, if cancer hadn't taken her 3 years ago. The memory hit him like a punch to the chest, but he pushed it down, focusing on the terrified child in front of him. "My name's Jake," he said softly, slowly reaching for his knife. "I'm going to cut these ropes, okay? Then we're getting you out of here." The blade cut through the rope easily. The moment her hands were free, the girl ripped the tape from her mouth and gasped for air, crying uncontrollably. Jake carefully checked her for injuries. His rough hands were surprisingly gentle as he looked at her wrists. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked. "Emma," she whispered in a quiet voice. "Emma Rodriguez." "Okay, Emma. Do you know who did this to you?" She nodded, tears running down her face. "2 men. They grabbed me outside school. They said they were taking me somewhere safe, but then they tied me up and left me here." Her voice broke. "They said they'd be back tonight. They said they were going to sell me." Jake's jaw clenched so hard he heard his teeth grind. Trafficking. His hands curled into fists, the leather of his gloves making a creaking sound. He had heard rumors and whispers in the club about operations moving through Oakland, but he never imagined he would stumble onto it like this. Did they say anything else? Any names? Emma nodded quickly. The big one called the other one Marco. Marco said they had a buyer waiting, someone important who paid a lot of money for girls like me. Jake pulled out his phone and called his club president, a man named Steele, who had been riding since before Jake was born. The phone rang twice before a rough voice answered. "Reaper, what's up?" "Steele, I found a kid. Trafficking situation. Industrial district, warehouse row. She says 2 men grabbed her. One named Marco. They're coming back tonight." Silence. Then Steele's voice turned cold and deadly. "How old?" 7, maybe 8. "Jesus Christ." Steele breathed out hard. "All right, give me 20 minutes. I'm calling the brothers. We'll handle this." "Steele," Jake said quietly, "we're not waiting for the cops." "Damn right we're not. See you in 20. Jake hung up and looked at Emma. "Listen to me very carefully. I've got friends coming. Good people who are going to make sure you get home safe. But first, we need to deal with the men who took you. Can you tell me what they look like?" Emma described them in detail. The big one had a snake tattoo on his neck, wore a gold chain, and drove a black SUV. Marco was shorter, thin, always checking his phone, and wore a red baseball cap. Jake memorized every word, storing it away like ammunition. The rumble of motorcycles announced the arrival of the Angels before Jake saw them. 8 bikes rolled into the industrial lot, engines growling like caged wild animals. Steele got off his bike first. His silver beard caught the sunlight. His eyes were hard as stone when he saw Emma. "Hell of a thing to find on a Tuesday," Steele muttered. He knelt down to Emma's level. "Hey there, little lady. These scary-looking bikers and me, we're going to make sure those bad men never hurt anyone again. You got my word." Emma looked at Jake uncertainly. He nodded. "You can trust him. Trust all of them." The other bikers gathered around, their faces serious. These weren't the criminals the media painted them as. These were fathers and brothers, men who lived by a code that put loyalty and protection above everything else. And right now, that code demanded justice. "All right," Steele said, standing up. "Reaper, take Emma to the clubhouse. Rosie's there. She'll take care of her. The rest of you, we're setting up a welcome party for when these jerks come back. Thumper, you're on lookout. Chains, Wrench, you're with me. We're going to have a conversation with these men about choices and consequences." Jake lifted Emma gently, carrying her to his bike. "You ever ridden a motorcycle before?" She shook her head. "Well, you're about to. Hold on tight to me, okay?" 20 minutes later, Emma was safe at the Angels clubhouse, wrapped in a blanket and drinking hot chocolate, while Rosie, Steele's wife, and the club mother called the police and Emma's worried parents. Jake watched Emma's face change when her mother's voice came through the phone. The relief was so pure it almost broke him. But he couldn't stay. He had work to do. Back at the warehouse, darkness had fallen like a curtain. The Angels had positioned themselves in the shadows, invisible and patient, waiting. Jake stood near the entrance, his back against cold brick, listening to the night. At 9:47 p.m., headlights cut through the darkness. A black SUV rolled slowly into the lot, windows tinted, music thumping from inside. It stopped near the dumpster where Jake had found Emma. 2 men got out. The big one had the snake tattoo. Marco wore the red cap. They were laughing and joking about something, completely unaware they had walked into a trap. "Where the hell is she?" the big one growled, looking around. "I left her right here. Maybe she got loose," Marco said nervously. "She got loose and we lose 50 grand? Not a chance. Check around back." That's when Jake stepped out of the shadows. The roar of 8 motorcycles erupted at the same time, headlights blazing to life, surrounding the SUV in a ring of chrome and fury. The 2 men froze, hands reaching for weapons they would never draw in time. Steele's voice boomed across the lot. "Gentlemen, we need to have a conversation." The big one tried to run. Thumper, built like a concrete wall, stepped into his path and dropped him with one punch. Marco reached for his phone. Chains grabbed his wrist and twisted it until the phone clattered to the ground. Jake walked forward slowly and deliberately, his boots echoing on concrete. He stopped inches from Marco's face. "You took a little girl. You tied her up like an animal. You were going to sell her." Marco's eyes widened in terror. "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Jake's fist connected with Marco's jaw, spinning him to the ground. "Don't lie to me. She told me everything. Names, descriptions, your entire sick operation." Steele knelt beside the big one, who was groaning, blood pouring from his nose. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us who your buyer was, where your operation runs, and every single person involved. And you're going to do it quickly because my patience is running thin." "Or what?" The big one spat. "You going to kill us? You're just a bunch of bikers." Steele smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Kill you? No, that would be too easy. See, we're not criminals. We're citizens concerned about our community, and we've already called the police. They'll be here in about 10 minutes. He paused, letting that sink in. But a lot can happen in 10 minutes. Broken bones take months to heal. Shattered kneecaps never really work right again. Wrench stepped forward with a tire iron in his hand. He didn't say anything, just tapped it against his palm. The big one's courage disappeared. All right. There's a warehouse on 5th Street. That's where we take them. A guy named Kostov runs it. Russian dude. He moves kids up and down the coast. Marco and me, we're just spotters. We find the kids and bring them in. How many? Jake demanded. I don't know, man. Maybe 20, 30. They come and go fast. Jake's vision went red. 20 or 30 children stolen, traffic destroyed. He looked at Steele, who nodded seriously. Tie them up, Steele ordered. Tight. We're leaving them gift wrapped for the cops. As the brothers secured the two men with zip ties and rope, Jake made a call. Not to the police. They were already coming. But to a contact he had in the FBI, a woman named Agent Shun, who specialized in trafficking cases. He gave her everything. The warehouse location, the name Kostoff, the timeline, the details Emma had provided. Jake, Agent Shun said, you know I can't use any of this if you extracted it through force. You're not using it. You're acting on an anonymous tip. You'll find plenty of evidence once you get there. Kids, documents, money, everything you need for warrants and arrests. And the two men who grabbed the girl. Already secured. Oakland PD will have them in custody within the hour. They'll talk. They're terrified. You're playing a dangerous game, Jake. No, Jake said quietly. I'm just making sure a little girl gets to go home to her parents instead of disappearing forever. That's not a game. That's justice. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The angels mounted their bikes, engines roaring to life. They would be gone before the police arrived, vanishing into the night like ghosts. But the evidence would remain. Two traffickers bound and helpless, a confession recorded on Jake's phone, and enough information to bring down an entire operation. As Jake rode away, the wind whipping past him, he thought about Emma, about her tears, her fear, her relief when she heard her mother's voice. He thought about Lily, the daughter he had lost, and wondered if somewhere, somehow, she was proud of him. 3 days later, the news exploded across every channel. Federal agents had raided a warehouse on 5th Street, rescuing 17 children and arresting 12 people involved in a human trafficking ring that stretched from California to Nevada. The ringleader, a man named Victor Kostoff, had been caught trying to flee to Mexico. Two men identified as spotters for the operation had been arrested and were cooperating with authorities. The media called it a miracle bust, a lucky break, excellent police work. Nobody mentioned the Hells Angels. Nobody mentioned Jake Morrison or Steele or any of the brothers who had made it happen. They preferred it that way. Recognition wasn't why they rode. Justice was. If you believe in the power of observation, in trusting your instincts, and in the courage it takes to speak up when something feels wrong, then pause for a moment, like comment, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Jake sat in a coffee shop near the Oakland police station, hood up, face hidden. He watched as Emma and her parents walked out of the building. The girl was clutching her mother's hand tightly. She looked healthier now, clean clothes, bandages on her wrists. But most importantly, she looked safe. As they passed the window, Emma suddenly stopped. She turned, scanning the street as if sensing something. Her eyes found Jake's just for a second. Recognition flashed across her face. She smiled, a tiny, grateful smile, and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Jake nodded once, tipping an imaginary hat. Then Emma's parents gently guided her to their car, and they drove away into a future that had almost been stolen from them. Jake finished his coffee and walked back to his bike. Steele was waiting for him, leaning against his own Harley, arms crossed. You good? Steele asked. Yeah, Jake said, strapping on his helmet. Yeah, I'm good. Agent Shin called me. She said the FBI wants to meet, talk about cooperation on future cases. They're impressed. Jake snorted. We're not informants. No, Steele agreed. But we are men who give a damn about this community. If there's a way to do more good without compromising who we are, I'm listening. Jake considered that. The Hells Angels had always been outsiders, rebels, the ones society feared and misunderstood. But maybe that position gave them a unique power, the ability to go places law enforcement couldn't, to see things others missed, to act when the system moved too slowly. Let's hear what they have to say, Jake said finally. Steele grinned. That's what I was hoping you'd say. As they rode back toward the clubhouse, side by side, the sun beginning to set toward the horizon, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not just the purpose of writing, of brotherhood, of living free, but the purpose of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, of being the wall between innocence and evil. The warehouse on 5th Street was raided that evening. Jake watched from a distance as agents swarmed the building, leading children out wrapped in blankets. Their faces showed the first glimpses of hope they had felt in weeks or months. 17 lives saved, 17 futures restored. But Jake knew the fight wasn't over. There were more Marcos, more Kostovs, more warehouses hidden in the shadows of cities across America. The darkness was vast and hungry, always looking for new victims. But now the darkness had something to fear, a group of bikers who rode not for glory or recognition, but for justice. Men who understood that being an outlaw didn't mean being lawless. That rebellion against a broken system could also mean protecting those the system failed. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you stories that prove heroism comes in all forms, that courage isn't measured by size or age, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever noticed something important that others missed? Your story might inspire someone else. 2 weeks later, Jake received a package at the clubhouse. Inside was a drawing done in crayon on construction paper. It showed a little girl holding hands with a big biker next to a motorcycle. At the top, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, it said, "Thank you for saving me. You're my hero. Love, Emma." Jake pinned it to the wall of the clubhouse, right next to a photograph of Lily. 2 little girls connected by loss and salvation, reminding him every day why he rode, why he fought, why he refused to look away when others would. Steele walked past, paused, and studied the drawing. "She's got talent," he said quietly. "Yeah," Jake agreed. "She's got a future now. That's what matters." More word came in, Steele said, changing the subject. Agent Chun sent over information about another operation. This one in Sacramento. Looks like kids being moved through truck stops. Jake felt the familiar fire ignite in his chest. "When do we ride?" "Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Jake nodded, already planning, already strategizing. The road ahead would be long and dangerous, filled with men who would do anything to protect their dark businesses. But the Hells Angels had never backed down from a fight, especially not one that mattered this much. That night, as Jake lay in his bunk at the clubhouse, he thought about Emma's drawing, about Lily's memory, about all the children he hadn't saved and the ones he might save tomorrow. The weight of it should have crushed him, but instead it lifted him up, gave him wings. Because sometimes the most important thing a man can do isn't follow the rules or stay in his lane or keep his head down. Sometimes the most important thing is to see evil and refuse to turn away, to trust your instincts, to act when others freeze, to be the shield for those who have no defense. The next morning, 8 motorcycles roared out of the clubhouse as dawn broke over Oakland. Chrome gleamed, engines thundered, and the Brotherhood rode north toward Sacramento, toward another fight, another chance to make a difference. Jake led the formation, Emma's drawing folded carefully in his jacket pocket, pressed against his heart like a good luck charm. He thought about what the media said about Hell's Angels, about bikers, about men like him, criminals, outlaws, dangerous. And he smiled because they were right about one thing. He was dangerous. Dangerous to men who preyed on children. Dangerous to those who thought they could operate in the shadows without consequences. Dangerous to anyone who believed that evil could thrive unchallenged. The wind roared past him, carrying with it the promise of another day, another mission, another chance to prove that heroism doesn't always wear a badge or follow a rule book. Sometimes it wears leather and rides a Harley, and sometimes that's exactly what justice needs. The road stretched ahead, endless and full of possibility. And Jake Morrison, known as Reaper to his brothers, rode toward the horizon with purpose burning in his chest and Emma's words echoing in his mind. "You're my hero," not because he wore a cape or carried a badge, but because when a child needed saving, he didn't hesitate. He didn't calculate the risks or consider the consequences. He simply did what any decent human being should do. He acted. And in that action, in that single moment of choosing right over wrong, he proved that heroes come in all forms from all walks of life. And sometimes the scariest looking people have the biggest hearts. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you to trust your instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, and to never underestimate the power of paying attention, please share it. Subscribe for more stories that prove heroes are everywhere. Courage comes in all forms, and sometimes the smallest person in the room has the biggest impact. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Emma's situation?